talk to 5 different scientists and they'll all have a different opinion, but there's no doubt whatsoever that sea level rise has happened and will continue to happen. There's an awful lot of arguing going on right now about the rate and whether or not humans are involved and whether or not it's a global phenomenon or local in various areas. I think you'd be hard-pressed at this point to find somebody who would deny that it's happening, though. That global warming is happening, and as a consequence, that sea level rise is happening. It's such a gradual thing, and there's so many other things involved, particularly with sea level. Part of me wants to say, as long as there are edges, there will be marshes, and as long as there are marshes, there will be a fairly vibrant ecology. 1,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, natives were building villages along the shoreline that are now underwater. Right? Dr. Seidel does research on some of those. He's got to go out and dive to get to these sites that used to be on the edge of the water. So as sea level rises, new marshes will be created as land is inundated. A potential danger is that now we have protected a lot of marshland, right? And right behind those marshes are suburbs. So what happens when sea level rises and floods these marshes, makes them part of the bay bottom, and we go to push back the marsh like we did however many times this has happened. I mean, this is a cyclical process, right? You've got global warming and global cooling, you've got glaciation followed by global warming. This has happened before. The bay has been bigger, it's been smaller. Hell, it's been a river. So as this grows, normally I would just say the marshes are going to push back, the bay is going to be a bigger area, a little bit deeper. We'll still have all the habitats that these animals need. However, I don't know if that's true anymore. On the eastern shore, you might push past a salt marsh and still find unoccupied land, maybe farmland or something. As that farmland becomes inundated, it's no longer good for corn. Sediment starts to settle out, you get a salt marsh. What about the western shore? You push beyond the salt marshes, you're in somebody's front yard, right? Or you're in a town or on a boulevard or in a mall. So I think that if sea level does rise, we might lose a lot of marshland instead of just pushing it back. And that, of course, is going to change the ecology of the bay quite a bit. The other thing is global warming, and I think that's a much longer scale. If we do change the temperature, temperature changes in the water tend to be mitigated by water's ability to buffer temperature. And so consequently, we might not see sweeping changes of temperature in the water. They'd be smaller than the changes on land. But you may still see some animals shifting north. So if there are species of crab or fish that are currently found off Cape Hatteras, they might be found up here off Ocean City or in the bay. And some of the species that are found here might be forced into more northern habitats up around Hudson Bay or something like that up in New York. So there's no doubt that'll happen with arable land and stuff. Soon, 250 million years from now, if the trend continues and the geologic timescale, America's breadbasket may be a desert. And the cold bogs of northern Alberta may be where people are growing corn because the climate's good there. But that's real long term. Short term, if you're just talking about water level rising a foot or a meter, I don't think that'll have humongous impacts on the sort of animals that live in the bay. The question really is, how far back can we push our marshes before they run into people? And that's going to have a big impact because an awful lot of the species we're talking about go up into the marshes for one reason or another, as nurseries, as feeding grounds, as places, refuges to hide from their own predators. Plus, an awful lot of the primary production, we talked about this in class too, comes out of those salt marshes. Salt marsh grasses, the ones that die and then become detritus, an awful lot of primary production comes out of those marshes. And if we cut our marshes in half or by a third, because as sea level rises it pushes up against civilization, we may be in a position of having substantially less habitat for some of these animals.